Welcome to the Craftsman Online Podcast, the only 5-star rated Masonic podcast endorsed by the Grand Lodge in New York. I'm your host, Brother Michael Arce, co-founder of CraftsmanOnline.com. The comments, opinions, and views shared during this program are those of individual Freemasons and do not reflect the official position of a Grand Lodge, concordant body, appendant body, or Masonic authority. A quick reminder is you can now listen early and ad-free to our episodes with our new subscriber offer. Get the link to start your 7-day free trial in the show notes for this episode. You've joined us for a talk on the Tyler's Place podcast. It's hosted by my guest this week, Brother Maynard Edwards, and produced by Brother Matt Bowers. It's the official podcast for the Scottish Rite Southern Masonic jurisdiction. Here's something that's really impressive about this podcast. They've been doing this for almost 10 years. They started in 2014 and have produced about 116 episodes at last count. We're going to get a link for you to join and tune in and listen to their program. This is a unique episode for me. I very rarely get a chance to interview other hosts, Brother Maynard. So looking back at the deep library that you have, your catalog of episodes, was there a Tyler's Place podcast episode that for you sticks out as being the most powerful, where you really were able to connect with either a guest or a topic?
That is a really great question. I think there's one that stands out in my mind. It was a statement that I kind of carry with me even now. It was past Grandmaster Roger Van Gordon, who he was a past Grandmaster in, I want to say, Indiana. Roger, I'm sorry, I know you're listening. He's now one of the heads of the Masonic Renewal Committee of the Conference of Grandmasters. Wonderful guy, wonderful friend and mentor. First time I interviewed him, we were in a hotel in Alexandria in the lobby, having a cup of coffee, and I literally interviewed him on my phone, and he was frustrated with the state of Masonry in that people were dismissing men who he knew would be good leaders because they didn't memorize 30-minute lectures. In our fraternity today, we would dismiss George Washington as a leader because he didn't have time to memorize a 30-minute lecture. Think about that for a minute. And he's right. You know, I'm a big believer in ritual is the easy part. Like, stop whining and memorize the lecture. Just shut up and memorize the lecture. Man up, memorize your ritual, and move on with your business. I know sometimes it's challenging. That's the truth. But you can do it. Just get it over and done with. Because if you're really going to be an effective leader of a lodge or of anything, the ritual and that part of it really is the easy part, because all you have to do is regurgitate it. It doesn't require any thought. It just requires simple muscle memory. And, I kind of carried that with me. The other one was just recently. I sat down for a very long time with past Grandmaster of Washington, D.C., Brother Akram Elias. And I've known Akram for a couple years now, and he's a wonderful guy. He showed up on the History Channel all the time. And, he's such a good speaker, but he really and truly is a true believer at the highest level of the power that Masonry has to unite and transform people. And it wasn't any one thing that he said in the interview. And again, it was only a couple of months ago, but it was just his entire approach to it just really struck me as, this is a guy who spent a good chunk of his life as a Freemason. He was a Grand Master. He's dedicated so much of his life to it. And that one really got to me. So that, and there's one I recorded just recently with my brother, Hank Griffin, and I call Hank the Garrison Keeler of Freemasonry. Hank's doing a podcast as well, but it's very different from what we're doing. He tells these homespun stories just like a Prairie Home Companion and relates them back to Freemasonry. And he's just gotten started in the last 3 or 4 months, and he is the Grand Chaplain in Maryland. And I didn't know him before this year, and I was having a tough time. Back in February, I was at a Masonic meeting. I got a phone call, got some bad news. And I went to Hank as the Grand Chaplain. I said, "Brother, I know you don't know me that well, but would you say a prayer with me?" And I get choked up now, surprising to no one. But Hank and I are now really good buddies. And I sat down and talked to him, talk about the real deal, the guy that walks the walk and talks the talk. How about you? Is there one that gets you in the feels?
It's weird living in this time where you can make connections like you have and like in person, which those are magical special moments. But now because of this technology and this world we live in, you can get an email from somebody, and that's literally where the friendship begins to blossom, right? And we had done a podcast on to me, the title was the fun part, was and practicing safe Masonic intercourse. In New York State, that's how we refer to when it comes to interacting with clandestines, that we're not supposed to be performing Masonic intercourse with them. And I've never seen a brother gone through the obligation that doesn't have a little smile on his face when that line comes out. But the brother that was the guest on the podcast, shared his story, which in all seriousness, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this happens. And what led to a brother who reached out to me and said, hey, I am a clandestine Mason, and I prefer to look at myself as an irregular Mason, and I want to become a regular Mason. Here's my story. Here's where I am. Can you help me? And Luis and I have become very close friends. He lives in Texas. I was trying to help him find a lodge. He eventually did find a lodge that he could affiliate with. They're having him go back all the way through all of the degrees, because he came from a jurisdiction in Mexico that was not recognized and didn't have amity with many grand lodges, but a lot of their ritual was so similar, and the difficult part was wanting to have those conversations with him to find out where the differences are. But obviously those would be the secrets that we can't reveal even to people who really should be brothers, but they just joined a group that wasn't trying to take his money. They weren't doing the wrong thing. They just weren't recognized by other grand lodges for the way that they were, quote unquote, practicing Freemasonry. He's now an entered apprentice, so he's a Mason. I was so excited to, have a conversation with him, to get him on the podcast for an episode and just stay with him and track with him through his progress. But through all this time, which would literally started out with an email about 2 years ago, he's had a daughter. He's gone through career changes. I've gone through career changes. I moved from upstate New York to DC. We've become like long distance friends, and to me, that's special. I don't remember really having those kind of relationships with radio listeners. It's something unique that we can do as Freemasons, and really kind of speaks to that brotherhood/fraternity aspect of the craft that sometimes goes overlooked.
When you look out over the horizon of Freemasonry, and there's the 30-foot question, what is the challenge, do you think, for us in the craft as we look out at the next, let's say, 5 years and then 10 years? What are the challenges that we really have in front of us to deal with?
I think the immediate challenge that we have right now, and like no joke, but we have to be better than Netflix.
I had a phone call with a guy who is the current, what's Greg? He's a senior steward in our lodge there, Matt?
Greg Otto? Yes.
Greg calls me and he goes, man, I'm listening to this audiobook, and these guys, he was listening to the Hey Dad audiobook, which is the audiobook Matt just did for the D. Malay about Frank Land. And excellent audiobook, by the way, if you want to listen to it, The Golden Tones of Matt Bowers. And he goes, man, I'm listening to this, and these guys, they went and they got entered, passed, and raised, and they did it all within like 3 weeks. How the heck did they do that? And I was like, yeah, they didn't have Netflix, and I think I actually said an adult website. I said they didn't have any of that to contend with, so they didn't have anything else to do. So that would, and it's the truth. You're right. That's 100%. We got to be better than Netflix. So
I remember sitting in lodge recently and going, why am I spending a Friday night sitting in here for a business meeting? Like, I could be home with my wife watching a Netflix show right now. As much as that's boring and sucked like 3 years ago during the pandemic, I'm like, I don't have to be dressed up in a tuxedo. And I think that that's the immediate challenge that we have, is getting past the boring business meetings. I don't see the membership decline as a critical issue. I do think the consolidation that's eventually going to happen, with many lodges coming back down to what is a reasonable size. I personally hold the opinion that Freemasonry is not right for every man, just like every man's not right to be a Freemason. I give this talk at every Brother Bring a Friend night. I say, look across this room. How many of us are sitting here? There's like 12 or 13, right? How many men do you know in your life? And how come you're the one that's in this room and more of the people you know aren't? It's a small circle. We also are living in a time where we feel that the problems that we face are so unique, and it's not. There's actually been harder times in the history of the world than where we are right now. And when it comes to defending the craft, for lack of a better term, and promoting the goodness of the craft, we were facing the same problems that our brothers did in the 18th century with the advent of the printing press and the pamphlets and the exposés and trying to shout down all the detractors. So really, I think that the issue that we have right now are more self-inflicted problems, so to speak, where we have men who are turning to the internet and a Google search to find a lodge and get there, and we just don't know how to bring them on the boat, so to speak, from being caught in the ocean.
Well, I think one of the big things that we face, and having gotten to the privilege of working with the Northern Masonic jurisdiction and the Shrine, and of course the Southern jurisdiction, the Scottish Rite, on the Be a Freemason project, is that what happens is that we get these inquiries, for lack of a better word, that I'm interested in joining a lodge, I'm interested in Freemasonry, and then we send them to the local lodges, and the ball gets dropped. And it's easy to get frustrated by that, but I as a lodge secretary now and a past master, and having sat in every chair and all that, it's a volunteer army. And so right now, tonight, you and I are doing this out of the love for the craft. And because another brother doesn't have the time to do this, doesn't mean that he doesn't love the craft, but maybe he just doesn't have the time. And maybe the lodge secretary is dealing with 15 other things. And, somebody's not hand walking a petition into him and saying, here's the petition, here's the check. You're just getting an email with a name and an email address on it. I can tell you right now, as busy as you get, sometimes that goes to the bottom of the stack. And it's unfortunate, but it's not done out of malice. It is what it is. Very few men get paid to do this. You have a finite amount of time in your day. And so do I tell my wife I can't have dinner with her tonight because I'm instead going to go and answer these 50 emails?
And the other issue to that is that when do you get a chance during a Masonic meeting to say, oh, by the way, I'm a certified digital marketing specialist, or, hey, by the way, I have a CPA, or I have a law degree. Like, when do you really get a chance to share your portfolio, your skills, your talents with the other brothers? That all happens in outside of the lodge events. And if we're not having those, then you really don't see the talent that's waiting for you. And I think a lot of that is being missed in the craft too. So yeah, like I said, I think a lot of the issues that we're having is just organizational. It's not the outside world. It's us just trying to find a way to transform, to be more efficient and be able to retain the people that we have and still have an onboarding process, a smoother process, a better defined process for those that are interested in joining us.
What I have found is that the public's curiosity for Masonry is equal to the craft's curiosity for Masonry. There's so many misconceptions and things out there. I have stayed away from discussions of the topic of Albert Pike, and specifically his statement on Lucifer that everybody misconstrues and takes out of context. And just today, I recorded a segment that will be part podcast, part YouTube video with Dr. Brent Morris. And Brent, he does a talk on Leo Taxiel and the Taxiel hoax and how it plays into Pike and the statement on Lucifer and things like that. And so I've stayed away from it because I can't resist feeding the trolls, and I have to stop. I need Matt and Brother Dean Albin. They try their hardest to whisper good counsel and tell me to stop, but people post things and I just need to delete it and move on with my day. But I feel this, I don't even know what the right word is. Would
it be a vice or a superfluity? Which one do you think it falls under that category?
I think it's a super stupidity is what it is. like there's this guy right now who's just as we were starting this discussion tonight, he's, you guys are Luciferian, you're this, you're that. And it's like, do you know how many times I've typed out these very long responses about how Lucifer's not even really in the Bible. And it's
actually, you had one the other day that was pretty short and sweet and to the point. You're a Satanist, you're a child molester, and you're this. And I'm like, wow, okay.
Satanist was worse than the way he ranked it. Like Satanist was worse than pedophile, and I was like, no. When you hear the word the secrets of Freemasonry, what does that evoke to you? And I don't mean to discuss specifically. I mean, I'm of the opinion that there are very few secrets, and I hate the word secrets of Freemasonry. I think it's misplaced. I prefer the term private, and I've talked about this in the past, is that when you are in the bathroom, what's happening is not really a secret. We all kind of know, but it's private. When you are alone with your wife, your partner, whatever, it's, what's happening in your bedroom is not really a secret, but it's private. I think Freemasonry is much the same way. There is that private initiatory experience, and there are some things that we kind of keep between members and brothers, but it's not secret. There's nothing nefarious about it. And I think the word secret, even though it has many definitions, and the old definition is the one that we're really using when we say the secrets of Freemasonry, I think in a modern context, it does give that nefarious connotation. So I try and avoid it. I don't think we're a secret society. So do you look at Masonry as inherently a secret society?
No. And then to kind of build on that, like, so the other line is, we're a society with secrets though. And I'm with you. Like, the secrets are no longer the passwords, the grips. You can look all that stuff up. Hell, I did. I read everything I could about all of the degrees before I went and even took them. I wouldn't say that I was minimally surprised, because there is a lot of that whole experience that you're still having nervous sweats and freaking out about, because you're like, wait a second, this wasn't in this Duncan's Ritual book that I just spent $7 on Amazon for, that was supposed to have all the secrets from these guys. This wasn't in that History Channel expose that I watch where they talk about the secrets of the degree. I'm with you, where I think the true meaning of the word secrets is really the unknown. It's the parts of the ritual that, and this is, I kind of gravitate over into the dark corners with the esoteric guys, where they're like, well, hey, did you know that the chakra? And you're like, wait, where did you get this chakra thing? Because nowhere in this ritual book that I've been given did we talk about this at all. Like, where did you guys get? But I think it's that, and not to bust on them, but I'm just saying that I think that the secrets are the search for those unknowns. It's the reading between the lines. It's what do these words really mean? It's one thing that, I've talked a lot about on our podcast is I probably stopped reading the Bible when I was in 5th grade, because I stopped going to church with my parents. And now I'm actually buying, I'm looking at it now, Roget's Thesaurus of the Bible. So I can go and look for certain words, because now they have a deeper meaning as a Mason. So I think that the secrets are our pursuit or our testing of the theories of the unknown. And the danger is that, just like our friend Joe Rogan, somebody's going to say something that's going to be pretty close to being right, and that's going to freak a lot of people out. And that's why it's a secret.
To me, the secret, and I mean, is it's less about a something that we're hiding from people, and more about something that is what's the word? Gosh, I can't think of the invaluable. It's that space between brothers, that bond that exists, that invisible bond that forms between two people who would have otherwise never met one another. Some of my best buddies in the world, Matt and I, we were friends before we were Masons for many, many years. And we worked together as, in a band for a long, long time. And, he became a Mason from that. It wasn't me who asked him, by the way, or who said, "Hey, are you, thinking about joining a lodge?" That was my one brother, Pete, and Pete passed away last year. And there is that connection between myself and Pete, this guy who I would have never known, And, had it not been for my relationship with Pete, Matt would have never known him. And it's like, there's this invisible thread and that's the secret. And I don't mean that like, the 11 herbs and spices. There's this uncommunicable thing that I can't tell you what that connection between us is, but there is something there. I can't put my hand on it. I couldn't even define it, but it's beyond being friends. And we're certainly not related by blood, but we are 100% brothers. And that bond is not. So that's the secret of Masonry. And you can tell people that all you want. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you're a Mason who has one of those relationships who's really, kind of gotten into it. And I always hate when people say, "Oh, you get into it, you get out of it what you put into it." But the truth is that you really do if you give yourself into this a little bit. And I have to say, watching Matt, old Mr. Bowers can be a little bit of a curmudgeon in life. And, but seeing him with the men who he came through his catechism class with and seeing those friendships form from complete strangers to now guys that he talks to on a pretty much daily basis is a really kind of a cool thing to watch from this perspective. And, I know it's impacted his life. As a human being, I know, his wife is even saying, "God, sometimes Matt's like a whole different person." I'm like, yeah, he's even less likable now than he always was. But it's kind of a really neat thing to see, and I think that's the secret of Freemasonry. But it's not a secret, but if that makes sense.
You make mention about secrets, and then you were talking a minute ago. It's not, or talking a little bit ago, to chip away at the rough ashlar, you don't use a giant sledgehammer. You use a gavel, a small instrument. And it just dawned on me all the times that Pete came up to me asking me if I was ready for a petition. That was his question was the gavel each and every time, that just chipped away and chipped away.
I mentioned, I think of Masonry as being something that should be very practical in a man's life. One of the first lessons you have to learn is that you have to ask to be a Mason. And I think that lesson is one of Masonry and life being a proactive team sport. You have to step forward and say, "I'm ready, coach. Let's do something." Don't walk in and sit on the sideline. Walk in and say, "Hey, where can I help? What can I do? Where can I be a part of this?" And that's hard for some guys to do that. Not every man can walk in and do that.
What's a wish list guest? Who's one person you wish you could get on the podcast?
I'm working on one of them.
Yeah, John Petrucci, who's a guitar player for Dream Theater. There are a couple of Dream Theater songs that appear to have Scottish Rite influence, and so we'd like to get from the horse's mouth whether or not that's true. I'd love to talk to Bob Dylan. I don't think most people even realize he's a Scottish Rite Mason, but I would love to talk to him. I don't know what state he's in at this moment in time in terms of his mental capacity. One minute I read that he's still sharp as a tack, and the next minute I read that, he's having some difficulties. I mean, I think he's 81, maybe. So love to chat with him. I'd love to talk to some more Prince Hall brothers. Our Grand Commander Cole, wonderful guy to work for and work with. He brought all four of the Grand Commanders in Northern Masonic jurisdiction and both Prince Hall Grand Commanders to the House of the Temple last September for a statement of unity, where basically saying Prince Hall, Scottish Rite, we're all brothers, and we all, we love and embrace each other. And I thought that was really cool. And I really want to get some more of them to join us and have those. So those are some of the basic ones. But how about you, wish list guest?
Well, I would need Doc Brown's time machine. I'd want to grab Preston and Webb and bring them together and just be like, dudes, these lectures that you wrote that are now part of our ritual, like, what does really all this mean? Where did you get the inspiration for this? What are you really trying to tell us for people that have really studied it? Because all we have now is kind of their works and their writings that they've made on it. But yeah, if I could travel back in time and have a discussion, 30 minutes would seem like a lifetime.
Yeah, if I were in the DeLorean and me and Marty ended up somewhere, I would go see Brother Pike and it'd be like, do not write that sentence. Put your pen down. Don't write about that. I would. You have no idea how much aggravation that has caused. I would do that. I got into Masonry because of Washington. When I got done being a radio host, I thought, well, my next step will be run for public office or something like that. And I didn't get to go to college as a younger man, so I thought, well, I need some kind of leadership training, and it looks like Masonry. A lot of great leaders came from that. So, and Washington's the guy. So, obviously a few minutes with George. I'd like to talk to Ben, but I feel like he'd be drinking. There'd be a lot of women around. So
those Revolutionary Era brothers, because I think the charges that we read now, especially the ones that talk about being a good citizen and not uprising against that was a byproduct of what happened with the American Revolution. But I would love to hear, that thought of okay, so first of all, you were a citizen. Well, it wasn't even a country. You were under the crown. And then what were you thinking? In that you were able to pull all this off. We just had Brother Kenneth Joel Ginn, who's the master of St. John's #1 in New York City with the Washington Inaugural Bible. And he was kind of painting the picture of what that first inauguration for Washington was like. And the two other men that were on the balcony that were there administering the first ever oath of office were Freemasons. And kind of going to your point about some of the Dan Brown or conspiracy theory, what's up with these Freemasons and their secrets? It's well, once you understand how good Freemasonry is, wouldn't you want to surround yourself with a bunch of people that are also part of this group that you can trust? I wish there were more of us that we could kind of bring into that picture.
How do you think and I know we got to wrap this up here before too long. How do you think we combat the trolls without doing the stupid thing that I do, which is engaging with each and every one of them? And I feel like there's always some that I could save. If I just make this one more point, he'll believe me, even though I know that my arrogance. But how do we combat the misconceptions that we are facing?
I just ignore them, honestly. I kind of have 3 rules in life. And rule number 1 is I just don't argue with stupid people, because you're never going to win. They're just going to beat it out of you. And you're just going to, and unfortunately, I have not, and please don't send them my way. I've had limited interaction with these haters, these detractors. I commend you for wanting to try to instill some light into these poor folks that just feel like if they just cast another rock, they're going to be the one to try to knock down this tower. But it's just not going to happen for them. But yeah, I know that there's nothing I could say to them that's going to get them to see things my way.
And in my brain, I know it too, but in my heart, there's this, I can save them. I can fix this person.
It's the ones that don't say anything that I'm most concerned about. Because, the crazy ones that, have their conspiracy theories and whatnot, it's the ones that when you tell people, hey, I'm a Freemason, or you don't feel comfortable sharing that information with somebody, and they're like, oh, and it's everybody else gives you my grandfather or my uncle or my father or some other, man that was important in my life and my family was a Mason. They're good people. It's oh, you're a Freemason. It's oh, did I offend you with something that I said? Those are the people that I'm always worried about, that we could be doing more when it comes to just Masonic PR, visible PR with our Grand Lodges and our lodges and all the jurisdictions, of just letting people know the wonderful amount of charity, the difference that we make in the community, that we are in the community that they live in, where those guys, that if Freemasonry didn't exist, we'd still be those quiet men behind the scenes that see something that needs to be done, and we do the work to fill the need.
You're 100% right. And that is always going to be our challenge. But then there's the school of thought in Masonry that if you do any charitable work and you get credit for it, and that's not really charity, you're getting something in return. And I hear that, but at the same time, I think we do need to raise awareness, and I'm certainly in the business of trying to raise some of the awareness for the craft. And I appreciate what you got. I've enjoyed all of your episodes that I've had a chance to listen to. I'm excited that there are people out there that are doing what you do, kind of for the love of the game, because I think it's just such an important thing that the people are having those discussions, and there's that content available.
I just want to say, it was a real honor. I was really just blown away when producer Matt reached out and said, hey, we'd like to have you on for the Scottish Rite Southern Masonic jurisdiction. I'm like, is this a joke? They want to have me come on their podcast?
You have a low bar for what you consider to be an honor, my brother.
This has been the Craftsman Online podcast. Again, big thanks to my guest, Brother Maynard Edwards, and his producer, Brother Matt Bowers from the Tyler's Place podcast, for coming on. If you've enjoyed our podcast and you want to hear more, you can tell Siri or Alexa to play the Craftsman Online podcast. We're available on all streaming platforms with new episodes every Monday morning. Until next time, let peace and harmony prevail.